You know, that very specific kind of prayer that, like, only happens at 2 in the morning in a hospital room. Or right after you look at a bank account that has hit absolute zero.
Oh, yeah. The classic crisis bargain.
Exactly. You pray, God, if you just get me out of this, I swear I'll change, I'll give, I'll serve. And then, well, the crisis passes.
Right, and we just kind of forget about it.
Yeah. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are exploring the spiritual weight of those forgotten words, and we're actually guided by the research of Pastor Adrienne Swanpool today. He's the author and researcher behind this material from his church, God's Not Done Ministry, and his channel, Adrienne Swanzy, on TikTok.
Yeah, and before we really jump in, we have a quick message to pass along. Pastor Adrienne Swanpool sends his warm love and regards to every single one of you tuning in today.
That is so awesome.
It really is. And to set the compass for our deep dive into his research, we have to start with his favorite slogan, God has the final say and the last move.
I love that. So let's unpack this crisis bargain thing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm thinking about it like signing a contract in the ER while you're in a total panic.
Oh, that's a really good way to put it.
Right. And then you just ignore the invoice when it shows up in the mail months later. But, like, does God actually hold a grudge over a moment of panic?
Well, looking at the texts here, specifically Ecclesiastes chapter 5, it's not really about God holding a grudge or, wanting to punish you.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's actually about spiritual alignment. So when you make a vow, your mind and your spirit align with a very specific intention.
Like a commitment.
Exactly. And when you ignore it later, you're creating this cognitive and spiritual dissonance. You're trying to move forward, but a piece of your spirit is still tethered to that unpaid spiritual debt.
Wow. So it's creating resistance.
Yeah, it's like having a kink in a garden hose. The water just can't flow.
But see, I usually think of my promises as just like a private contract, just me and God.
Yeah.
If my hose has a kink, it's only my own garden drying up.
Yeah. You would think so, but the sources actually use the story of Jonah to totally blow up that idea of a private promise.
Wait, Jonah and the whale.
Yep. I mean, Jonah was told to go to Nineveh, but he hopped on a boat going the exact opposite way.
Right, he ran away.
Exactly. And his delayed obedience didn't just affect him, it created a literal storm that terrified a whole boat full of innocent sailors.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, unfulfilled vows make us bottlenecks for God's work. And that bottleneck effect is exactly why Pastor Adrienne points out that ministries really rely on the faithful flow of support to reach people.
Because they need those resources to function.
Right. Platforms like God's Not Done One Ministry and Adrienne Swanzy, they are actively working to reach the lost. But they rely on people stepping up. When you withhold what you promised, you literally hold up the work.
Wait, so by holding on to my resources, I'm actually stalling a ministry's ability to reach someone else. That is a heavy realization.
It really is.
I mean, we're basically sitting in the boat causing a storm for other people. But if it's that important, why is it so easy for us to let these promises linger the second the crisis is over? Like, nobody actively wants to be a bottleneck.
Well, the sources point to John 10:10 to explain the mechanism here. The enemy actually uses both tragedy, like, say, a painful divorce, and massive success, like a booming career, to distract us.
Wait, success can be a distraction too.
Oh, absolutely. It's a deliberate tactic. By getting you so busy or distracted that you abandon that vow, the enemy stops the flow of generosity.
Which opens the door to spiritual drift.
Exactly. And ironically, it often leads to the very financial strain you thought you were avoiding by holding onto your money so tightly.
Man, I have to admit, realizing you are the bottleneck feels pretty overwhelming. Does realigning mean you have to start completely over? Like, do I owe back taxes on my spiritual promises?
No, not at all. Look at the solution presented in the text with Lydia from Acts 16. She was a really successful businesswoman, right? But she didn't bargain out of desperation.
What did she do differently?
She simply opened her heart and her resources to support the Apostle Paul's ministry. She made sure his physical needs were met so he could focus entirely on spreading the gospel.
So she wasn't hoarding it.
Right. She didn't treat her resources like a reservoir she had to protect. She treated them like a checking account for the gospel, just constantly clearing the checks.
Okay, so it's really just about getting back to a place where the checks are clearing again. And remembering, as Pastor Adrienne Swanpool says, God has the final say and the last move. It is not over.
That's exactly it. And the steps are incredibly practical. First, just remember what you promised.
Okay.
Second, repent, which really just means to realign without carrying all that shame. And third, resume.
Even if it's a small start?
Even if it's tiny, just start being consistent again. Consistency is what restores the flow.
Which leaves you with a totally different way to look at that hospital room bargain. Here's something else for you to mull over. What if the very crisis you just bargained your way out of was actually designed to give you the resources or the empathy or the platform to fulfill that exact promise?
Oh, wow. That completely reframes the purpose of the storm.
It really does.
Well, before we wrap up this deep dive, we want to speak Pastor Adrienne's favorite blessing over you from numbers 6.24 through 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Beautiful. If today's message touched you, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at God's Not Done One and follow on TikTok at Adrienne Swanpool and grab that free resource at the bottom of the latest videos. We'd love to keep walking this journey with you. Until next time, God bless you richly.